And we are live. Welcome to the latest Answers Now. Ask me anything, ask Adam anything. Tonight we're going to be talking about how to think like a behavior analyst. So what we want from you, our listeners, our followers, our people who are just tuning in for the first time, is to interact as much as possible. You can ask questions. We're going to talk about behavior. Why do kids do what they do? How do behavior analysts analyze these kinds of behaviors? How do they come up with plans? How can you, as a parent, learn some of this stuff? Because that is the whole point of Answers Now, is to connect you directly to your own clinician who can help you learn how to react a little bit. Now, what I want to make super clear, I'm not here to make you into a clinician. I'm not here to make you into an ABA therapist, but learn some of the tips and tricks, because this has happened to me quite a bit. I used to do a lot of in-home stuff. I'd work in the home, and the parents would be like, oh, why does my son or daughter suddenly listen to you after only 4 weeks? They never listen to me. You've got them doing all this stuff. It's 100% technique. It's 100% perspective, right? Because applied behavior analysis, ABA, is non-medical. There's no medicine I'm giving your kids. There's no shots that I'm giving them. It's just me sitting in front of them or around them and moving around in a particular, very structured way. So we're going to talk about that, because that is how I got into the field. I worked with kids. I thought I was pretty good, and then I started getting children on the spectrum to work with, and they ate my lunch. All my good teaching, or maybe in your guys' case, good parenting. You might be a great parent. You got 3 kids, they do everything. You have your kid on the spectrum, nothing works. 100% was there. And it took me, 5-6 years of lots of schooling to learn all this stuff, but we're here to share it with you. So let's get started. One of the things that we want to make sure that you know about is how to get access to this. So Answers Now, the new app, is available in the Apple Store and on your Google Play Store. And you just go in, type Answers Now, one word, and you download the app. And within minutes, you can be chatting with your own clinician. So here we go. First things first, one of the first things I learned is behavior analysts spend a lot of time talking about what is behavior. And it's one of those things almost everybody thinks they know about teaching, right? Because we've all been in classrooms. We've all had teachers. Most of us don't think, oh, I drove a car, I can fix a car. But I guarantee you, if you ask somebody what's a good way to teach something, everybody's got an opinion. Same thing with behavior. We're all behavior analysts, right? We're like, why is that car slowing down so much? Why is my bank taking so long to give me the money? Why did she wear her hair that way? Why is that guy dressed like that? We're all trying to analyze this stuff. So one of the real, I don't want to say breakthroughs, but different ways that the behaviorists started looking at things is we kind of stripped out, we're not going to worry too much about what people tell us about why they're behaving a certain way. It doesn't really matter what you think. We're going to look at what's the person doing, period. We're going to treat it like a science. How fast are they walking? How many times do they blink? See my hands kind of going back and forth? Why is he doing that? How many times does his hand go back and forth? So a behavior analyst definition of behavior is the movement of an organism through time and space. Super boring when you think of it like that. But that's the original framework. I'm just focusing on what the person is doing. Not what they're saying, just what they're doing. There's a subcategory of this that's really important called verbal behavior, which is a kind of a subcategory of behavior analysis. And its analysis of behavior looks at it a little differently. It says, how does one person influence another person? So instead of this really static, I'm just going to study somebody who's kind of walking by and count how many steps they take, verbal behavior is what I'm doing right now, right? I'm trying to influence your behavior. I'm trying to keep you watching. You, to the degree that I keep doing this, you keep listening. It brings a social component into behavior. So now we have a couple of definitions of behavior, and here's key sort of frameworks for how our behavior analyst sort of looks at things. One is nothing happens by accident. All behavior is lawful. Now, that's sort of a strange sounding word, lawful. What it means is it obeys the laws of nature. And one of the first insights that you usually get once you kind of sort of digest this a little bit and have your folks explain it a little bit more, is that everybody, all the time is acting in a way that's working for them. So a lot of folks get frustrated with difficult behaviors, whether it's your kid or your spouse or your boss, where you're like, behavior just came out of nowhere. I have no idea why my kid does this. I have no idea why my boss did that. Behavior analysts never think like that. There's always a reason. It's always knowable. There's always a function, is a word we use a lot, a reason behind it. So the first orientation is, I walk in a room, no matter what this kid is doing, that kid is doing it for a specific reason, and that reason is working for him or her. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's crazy. Like, he's banging his head on the floor, right? You know how I know it's working for him? Because he's banging his head on the floor. Nobody ever does anything that doesn't work for them. Now, that's a really hard thing for most people to kind of wrap their head around first. Like, what about, here's a good example, what about drugs, right? Like, why would you take drugs? Why would you smoke cigarettes? That's not good for you. You know how you can tell it's working for them? They're doing it. They're lighting the cigarettes. They're taking the drugs. They're engaging in what, fill in the blank, whatever the behavior is. That person is doing it because it's working for them. So that's a really powerful sort of place to come from, is you're sitting there, attempting to figure out what's going on. One, it's happening for a reason. And two, that reason is working for the kid, the person that you're talking to. Okay, so that's I think we've got an idea of like what behavior is, right? I'm just studying the behavior. We got an idea of some of what the ground rules are. It's lawful, it's happening for a reason, and that reason is knowable. So we are going to, I want to check my time here a little bit. Cool. I'm exactly on target here. Again, you are encouraged to ask questions, to interact, to hit the little heart button or the smiley button or whatever it is that you want here. You can ask any kind of question about, like, well, why does my kid do this? And you can ask me, why do you do something? Why do I wear yellow shirts on Tuesdays? And we will try to analyze it. I am Adam Dreyfus. I am the Chief Science Officer of AnswersNow. AnswersNow is a very innovative new app that you can find on the Google Store or the Apple Store, and you download it. And what's the whole point? The whole point is that we are here to support parents of children diagnosed with autism by connecting them directly to their own board-certified clinician. This is not a go to the website and look up a bunch of articles. This is not a, hey, take this course. There's going to be a real person on the other side of your phone who's going to be able to answer your questions or whatever it is that you want to ask, whether it's about behaviors, academics, IEP meetings. I want him to get along with his brother. I want him to eat tuna fish. You name it, we can help. Because there's one thing that we know is that we, us fancy pants experts, have done a terrible job of helping you parents out. And AnswersNow stops that right now. So feel free to go check us out, download the app and sign up, or just check out our website and learn a little bit more about us. So we got this idea about behavior. Behavior is lawful. It's knowable. The other thing is, usually when something happens, we're just like, well, what led up to the behavior? Right? That's a fairly normal analysis. Like, I got a big fight with my significant other. What led up to the fight? Right? It's a very common way of looking at behavior. One thing that we've learned through kind of applying scientific principles to these things is it's less what led up to the behavior, that certainly can happen, but it's what happens right after the behavior, the consequence for the behavior. Consequences pull behavior along. Behavior is not so much pushed by what's leading up to it. It is continued by what happens immediately after. So a good example is, I'm going to use, because this one happens a fair amount, somebody slapping themselves in the face. So why would somebody slap themselves in the face? Well, that's a behavior we deal with quite a lot in children with disabilities and definitely children diagnosed with autism. So what's the cause of that? Well, certainly something kind of led up to that point, but what has built that behavior up is something happens right afterwards. So now I'm going to look at, there's 4 functions of behavior. It seems crazy that you can explain almost any behavior on earth with 4 possible scenarios. But I submit to you that it's true. So we're going to look at the first one, attention. People think, oh yeah, people like attention. I tell you what, I had no idea before I got into this field how unbelievably powerful attention is as a driver of behavior. So let's take the face slap, for example. Kid slaps himself in the face. What happens? Someone turns to them. Hey, whoa, don't slap yourself. Are you okay? What's going on? So what's happened is they would like some attention. Nobody's giving them some attention. They probably inadvertently, the first time, maybe glanced their hand across, and then somebody paid attention to them. So the consequence of that behavior, the consequence of them slapping themselves in the face, is they got something that worked for them, some attention. The power of attention cannot be underestimated. And one of the beautiful things about it is you control all of the attention. That's the really nice thing about attention-maintained behavior, is that you are the source of the attention that they're usually seeking. So it comes down to, like, how do you manage, how do you give attention? So we'll talk about that in a little bit, like how do we manage attention-maintained behavior using our face slapping example. So that's 1, attention. 2, escape. And that's exactly what it sounds like. I want out of here, right? Like in its purest form, it literally means somebody gets up and walks out or runs out. Escape. I'm trying to escape what it is that's happening right now. You see this in school all the time. Hey, time for a test. Slap myself in the face. Oh my God, you go to the office. Same behavior, slapping myself in the face. But instead of, I don't want attention, but I want escape. And the kid or the adult or whoever has learned, if I slap myself in the face at least once, maybe repeatedly, they're going to stop asking me to do what they're asking me to do. I might get to go somewhere else. I might get a timeout. They might take these materials away from me. So those 2, attention and escape, account for almost all of the behaviors that you're going to deal with. Almost all of them. That is I would say, mildly controversial statement, because people say, well, what about sensory? We're going to get to that. What about like a demand for something? We'll get to that. But I promise you, having dealt with tens of thousands of behaviors at this point, attention and escape are the 2 kind of big ones, especially for what we're talking about here. I don't need to check back in yet. So we have attention, I told you 4, attention, escape, and then a tangible. We also call this access. That means they want something. That drives a lot of your behavior, right? Why do you go to work? You go to work so that you can make some money. What do you do with that money? You go buy stuff that you want. So you gain access to things that you want. Xbox, games, hair products, you name it. Your whole work environment is set up so that you get tokens, money, and you go exchange those for things that you want. How's that similar to a lot of the stuff that we see? Oh yeah, that's what it looks like when you're working. A lot of these ABA folks are working with kids. We call that a token economy. Why do we use that? Because that's how the world works. That's why you show up to work. Every 2 weeks, they give you a little pile of tokens, and you go exchange that for stuff. So a lot of the behaviors that we don't want to see are because we're denying somebody access to something. An iPad. Oh, hey, I want my iPad. Nope. Boom. I'm going to slap myself in the face until you give me the iPad. Pow, pow, pow. Here you go. Okay, thanks. Stop. Now I'm playing with my game. Same behavior. Slapping myself in the face. It can be attention maintained. It can be escape maintained. And it can be because they want something. You usually see this in the kitchens with the kids who can't speak either at all or very well. They'll begin misbehaving or behaving in a way that the parents are like, uh-oh, here we go. We're going to have a tantrum. I think they're hungry. You take them in the kitchen, and because they can't tell you what they want, you just start opening cabinets up because you think they want. You're trying to give it to them. The last one is kind of the trickiest one, and it's something that does come up a fair amount, and I'm going to say something a little bit more than mildly controversial. It is accounts for a lot of the people out there who think like this is what's causing the behavior of my child on the spectrum, and that's sensory. And what we mean by sensory is something that the person does that just makes them feel good. It's also called automatically reinforcing. So it's not that they want attention, it's not that they want escape, It's not that they want access to something. They slap themselves in the face because either they like the way that that sounds or they like the way that it feels. It's just the same as you kind of scratching your jaw, rubbing your arm, doing whatever. Like, it's automatically reinforcing. It doesn't need anything out in the world for you to want to do it. It is one of the more difficult behaviors to tackle if it's a really so like a lot of times you will see kids who scratch themselves, and they do that repeatedly, and they can cause tissue damage. So you definitely are like, all right, I don't want my kid to cause tissue damage. But the reason they're scratching themselves is they just like the way it feels. So here in just a second, we're going to walk through attention, escape, access, and sensory stuff. Like, what do you do? And how do you know which is which? These are great questions. I do want to, we made a promise when we were going to air tonight. We sent out some emails and asking people if they had any questions for tonight. We're going to answer the question that came in first. So I'm going to do that now. Really quick reminder, I am Adam Dreyfus, the Chief Science Officer of AnswersNow. We're talking about behaviors and how to think like a behavior analyst. And the question was, how do I get help if I homeschool my child? It's a complicated question. So the easy answer is, for what we're largely talking about here, is access to applied behavior analysis, access to therapists who practice applied behavior analysis. You don't need to go to school for that. Most of the people who get ABA therapy in their home is they're either paid out of their pocket, which is very expensive, $30,000 to $60,000 a year, but there are people doing that. The vast majority of people getting applied behavior analysis in their home are paid either through their insurance or through Medicaid. So that would be my easy answer is I would look at, does your insurance cover it? You can just call them up and ask them. It'll be in there somewhere. If not, do you qualify for Medicaid coverage? Because that's another way to get it paid. Or you just pay out of pocket. There are lots of ABA companies out there. And now, which has never been the case before, you can literally download AnswersNow and get access to a board-certified behavior analyst, which is exactly what would happen if you called any of these companies up, and they will work directly with you on whatever it is you need help with. Like if you're homeschooling your kid, maybe your child is on the spectrum and is engaging in some behaviors that are aggressive or self-injurious. You would like them, we could consult on that, on kind of as parent training. If you have academic questions, how do I help my kid read? How do I help my kid learn how to go to the bathroom? Definitely, that's why we're here. Is we're trying to reduce the barrier of entry to this kind of information for everybody. People who homeschool, people who have kids in school, you name it. So great question. Thank you, Patricia. Feel free to log in and ask any other kind of questions that you want. So we've walked through kind of how do we teach people how to be behavior analysts, right? So they have to learn all behavior is lawful. Everything has a reason. Behavior is pulled along by its consequences. We have learned that there's 4 functions of behavior, reasons why people do stuff. They want some attention. They want to escape a situation. They want access to something, or they just like the way it feels. It's automatically reinforcing. So what do I do then? What do I do if those are true? So this is going to be a brief introduction to this. So first, what a good behavior analyst would do is like, well, how do I figure out what the behavior is? So say the behavior is face slapping. We're going to stick with face slapping. And I want to see, is it attention seeking, right? Is that what's driving the behavior? So I'll like bring the kid in a room or adult or whoever and not pay them any attention. I will very consciously, I won't look at them, I won't talk to them, I won't mention them, I won't say their name, nothing. And if at a certain point they start slapping themselves in the face and then I turn towards them, I've got a pretty good idea that face slapping is being pulled along by attention. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, now we switch to escape. how do I find out if it's escape? It's pretty straightforward. You would, especially with escape, you would kind of put them in a situation where you would ask them to do something that's really hard, or puts a lot of demands on them, and see what happens. And most of the time, you can figure out escape pretty quickly. Most people don't argue too much about it, but it's usually something happens and the kid gets up and runs away. But you can manufacture this, right? So if you can consistently get the kid to try to escape, then you're like, all right, this is escape maintained behavior. So this face slapping that he's doing is maintained by escape. He's trying to escape what it is that I'm asking him to do. Tangible is about the easiest thing there is. You take some stuff, take some toys, and like a phone's a really good one because most kids are pretty attracted to the phone. Put the phone out there, they've got some choices, and then you take the item that you think that they want and you eliminate it. And then you just leave them alone. And you'll talk to them a little bit. You want to make sure that it's not attention, so you're going to give them a little attention. But if they start slapping themselves in the face at a certain point, you'd be like, all right, they're using the face slapping to try to get a phone or to try to get an item. So it's driven by access to something. Sensory is about the easiest thing in the world because what you want to do is shut everything else off. If you could put them in a room where they know that you're not there, so they're not getting any attention, and they got plenty of stuff to do, will they just start slapping themselves in the face if nothing else is going along? Again, a very difficult one to remediate because it just is them. It's being kind of driven by themselves. So we got attention, access, or escape, access, and sensory. I wildly oversimplified how a behavior analyst would go about assessing this. These kinds of trying to figure out if it's escape or attention are fairly elaborate procedures. But those are the basic ideas for how behavior analysts kind of think. And now we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit more and go to, all right, if it's escape, if it's attention, what do I do? How do I deal with that? So that is going to be our next chapter. I try to break these up into little blocks. And in between, remind you that you are watching an AnswersNow, Ask Me Anything, where we're talking to folks about how to think like a behavior analyst, which does not seem like a wildly popular topic at this point. And I'm Adam Dreyfus, the Chief Science Officer. AnswersNow is a downloadable app that you can download off of the Apple Store or your Google Play Android device and answer a little quick questionnaire, sign up, and you will be chatting with your own board-certified behavior analyst, kind of like an assistant in your pocket. So here we are. We've got attention, escape, access to something, sensory. So if it's attention, how do I get somebody to stop doing that? If he's slapping himself in the face because he wants my attention or she wants my attention, how do I get them to stop? The essence of simplicity. You control all of the attention. So this is very difficult to do right out of the box, and a lot of parents, it kind of runs counter to your instincts as a parent. But when they slap themselves in the face, you don't respond to it. But you do respond to all of the instances where they're not. So a lot of people are like, I think I understand. So they slap themselves and you don't pay any attention for a while. You can get yourself in trouble that way. So what it would look like is Adam slaps himself in the face. You don't react for just a couple seconds, right? It's that kind of immediacy. It's that the consequences, what's happening right after the behavior. And my hand's sitting in my lap, and you just say to your kid, "Oh, great job having your hand in your lap." And you pour attention on them when they're doing what you want them to do. Catch them doing what you want them to do. So what that behavior is telling you is that for that kid, they're not getting enough attention just throughout the day. Think of it like water, right? They're getting thirsty. And the thirstier they get, the more intense their behavior is going to be. But fortunately, especially with attention, you have the water. You can give them attention whenever you want. Hey, a little pat on the head. Hey, a little wink. Hey, a little just whatever, right? All of that is watering. You're giving them water. So as they're getting it'll be like this. There's a certain line that they will get to where they will start slapping themselves in the face. But the more You keep that line up here, they don't get there. So it's called differential reinforcement, which is exactly what it sounds like. I'm giving them something for when they're doing something different. What happens is that these behaviors over time can get more and more intense and more frequent, and it can be a little harder to find, especially if they're slapping themselves over and over and over again. But you want to find that, even that split second where their hand is down. So you want to catch them doing what you want. It's the best advice I can give parents and don't just be like, good job all the time. But praise your kids for doing what it is that you want. We deal with this all the time. I run a very large school, and people will not say anything to the kids unless they're misbehaving. That's how you end up with a lot of attention-maintained behavior. So catch them for attention, catch them doing what you want, ignore the stuff you don't want. Caveat to that, safety overrides everything. You're not going to ignore somebody running at you with scissors because you think it might be attention-maintained behavior. Safety trumps everything. All right, so escape. Escape's a little bit more complicated, but think of it in a classroom kind of setting. One of the most powerful tools that teachers got is you get to decide what you put in front of them. So you can change what it is that you're putting in front of them. If your kid is trying to escape something, there's a reason they're trying to escape something. It's usually a person. It's frequently a person. Like they have decided because of the way that interaction is going, they don't want to be around that person. It can be a parent, it can be a mom, it can be like they want out. So the best way to control for kind of escape, make sure that they've got something in front of them that you're asking them to do that's appropriate. Don't stop asking them to do things. The first question a really good behavior analyst will ask is, does the child have the skills required to do the thing that we're asking them to do? Because a lot of times for escape-maintained behavior, you're like, oh, well, I'm just asking him to do this thing. I don't understand why it's a big deal. It's because he can't do it. It'd be like if I sat down and every time you saw me, I started asking you crazy physics questions, and you have no idea what's going on with physics. Sooner or later, you would just start getting up and walking away from me. It's the same idea. Like you have to meet them where they're at. So a lot of escape-maintained behavior is because they lack certain skills that would let them do whatever it is that you're asking them to do. Again, great place to have a behavior analyst help you out as you develop your parent skills and get a little bit better. Oh, I see. Oh, okay, I kind of can teach them this, because as good as we are, you're the expert on your kid. It might not feel like it all the time, but we're really here to kind of help unlock your inner CEO and give you the tools necessary to successfully manage these kids and sometimes adults. So attention, catch them doing what you want. Escape, make sure they got the skills necessary, but you can change what it is that you're asking them to do. A lot of folks will be like, oh, I'm going to offer them something more amazing to sit there and do this thing. So I'm asking them to do this thing they're escaping for, and I'm going to up the motivation. I'll be like, hey, if you sit here and work for 15 minutes, I will give you an Xbox. You are backing yourself into a very tight corner, involved in massive negotiations with your kids or adults. What you want to do is either teach them new skills or make sure that what you're asking them to do is appropriate. So we got attention, we got escape, and now we're going to look at tangible items. I'm going to go through a couple things here. One is very difficult to do, and one is fairly easy to do. So kids who have big upsets when stuff is lost, there's a bunch of pretty straightforward strategies you can find. Like you can teach them how to wait a couple minutes. You can teach them how to request things. That's one of the biggest things. Like, you can ask to have it back. I'm not going to give it to you if you're having a tantrum. But at its core, what we deal with a lot is a kid should be able to hand over something that an adult is asking for 100% of the time. There's not a kid on earth, I think, that does it 100% of the time. I've got 2 kids. I promise you, they're not like, sure, Dad, here's my favorite thing that I'm just handing over to you. But that's what we want. That's usually where the frustration comes from, is like, maybe you're having them play on your phone. You're like, hey, I need my phone. And they have a huge upset because they're playing their kind of game. You're like, fine, all right, you get to keep the phone. And now you don't get your own phone. You don't get your own iPad. You like whatever it is. Or they're playing with that one thing, and you need to go to the store with them. You're like, hey, we need to go to the store, and they're not listening to you. What you want them to do is just hand you the thing and be able to do what it is that you ask. So there's a little protocol that we call the Give Me protocol. And it's a little bit tricky, but I trust you. And I've done this dozens and dozens of times. So the Give Me protocol, the goal is I want this kid to give me something whenever I ask. I'm like, oh, but every time I ask, he has this huge upset. So you have all this, hundreds sometimes of incidents of the kid having a big upset. So the Give Me protocol is pretty simple. You start out, you walk up, you say, give me, and then you instantly take it out of their hands, and then you instantly give it back. So it goes like out, back. So you can almost see they begin to react, right? Because you've just taken the thing, but now they have it back. And so you do that like kind of randomly every now and then. Give me, and then boom, take it and hand it back. You will see, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, depends on a bunch of different things, they'll become less reactive because they're like, when he says give me, like I get it back right away. Like I don't have to fight for this. So as you see them kind of like their reaction come down a little bit, you do a little bit of a pause. Give me, take it, and wait like a second, and then hand it back. And what you do is you stretch that time out little by little. So you take it, give me 1,000, 2,000, 3. Here you go, right back. And then what you will find is you will walk up at some point, and you'll say give me, and they will hand it to you. That's the Give Me protocol. I have, again, wildly oversimplified it, but that's what we're doing here. We're trying to reduce the barrier of entry to this stuff, get the knowledge out there in your hands. A little knowledge can be a little bit of a dangerous thing. I highly encourage you to work with experts on this. And how can you do that? How could you do that? Oh, you know what? You could go to getanswersnow.com and learn more about us and see what our clinicians all are about. Or you can just download the app right out of the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. You just type in Answers Now with no space, and it should be the first app. It'll have this, if you're looking up in the corner, the little purple butterfly symbol, and then you sign up and chat with your own clinician. So that is, let's see, where are we at here? I'm doing my little time check.
We've got some questions if you want to answer questions that are from...
What? How come I'm not seeing them?
I don't know why. I thought you were, but...
I was not. This is, for those of you guys who don't know, like that godlike voice that you just heard is the wildly talented Allison, who's here helping us. Usually I see the comments going, but I haven't seen anything. So go, shoot. Let's do some questions.
First question is from Valerie, and she asks if there are any eating strategies for the picky eating.
Ooh. Valerie, fantastic question, and I'm not sure why I'm not seeing your feed. We'll figure this out. So are there any strategies for it? Yeah, absolutely. We actually have on our website, and it's free. You can just go onto the website. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like a set of steps on how to help your kid eat more things. So it's specifically to this. How do I expand the number of things that my kid will eat? And I will walk you through it really quickly because we're here. So usually what the problem is, what usually Valerie's talking about, I could be off base here, but is that, hey, if I put a new food in front of him or her, or I ask them to eat something, they have a big upset. So I just don't, right? Like they eat white bread and bananas, and that's it, and nothing else. Well, all right, so let's say we want them to eat green beans. Just randomly, you just pick green beans. So what you would first do is when you sat them down, here's your bread, here's your bananas, and I'm going to put a little plate of green beans kind of in front of your plate. So what you're trying to signal is like, hey, there's some food here, but you don't have to eat it. I'm not asking you to eat it. Don't say anything. Just literally just put it there. If they have some kind of upset, just move the plate back away from them. What that signals to them is, hey, I'm not asking you to do this right now. This plate, it's just sitting here, right? So what hopefully happens is they calm down, right? And they don't worry about the beans and they eat their food and away you go. And just keep putting the green beans down until they can tolerate having the plate of green beans next to their regular food without any kind of upset. So now what you've done very similar to the Give Me kind of protocol. Then I do what's called look, touch, taste, bite. So they've looked at it, right? You've already got them, so they're looking at it. They're not having an upset. And you just prompt them to touch it. Touch the green beans. If they have a big upset, move the green bean plate back. But then come back to it, move it, just touch it. And if they touch the green beans, just touch it with their finger, something good happens. Like you either give them like like a hey, nice going, right? A hug, maybe a Skittle, maybe some kind of like little treat for just touching it until they'll touch it anytime you ask them to. You just like touch it and they'll touch it. And then you go taste. And what I do with that is I just touch it either to their lip or their tongue. They don't have to bite. They just have to, and again, the first time you might try it, even though you've done this, they might get kind of upset. Just push the plate back, no more demands. What you want to do is slowly reduce all of these kind of reactions. And you want to reinforce, give them something kind of good when they're doing what you want. And once you got them like, and sometimes it'll take a couple days, sometimes it'll take a couple weeks, especially if they're really resistant. They'll touch it, and then you go to bite, little bite. What I have found over and over and over is usually you don't have to go through all of these steps, that if you leave a food, once they've kind of gotten used to the fact like you're not making them eat it, you're not demanding, there's just food sitting on a plate, what I'll start doing is they'll sit down to eat, and before I put down their food I want them to eat, I'll just put the beans there and leave them there for a little bit. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. I'll give them something else to do. We're talking about stuff. Nobody's asked them. And kids will just, they're hungry. They'll eat the food in front of them. And I want to say 9 times out of 10, that exact technique is how I've gotten kids to expand out their food choices. Because the truth is, when they're little kids, like they're kind of working on you, right? Like you put yellow cheese down and they have an upset and you're like, whoa, no more yellow cheese. They don't know. They didn't taste it. They have no idea. You want to give them opportunities to kind of expand their palate out a little bit. I hope that answered it, Valerie. Feel free to follow up. We have more questions.
Yes. The other question was from Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
And she asked, won't your kids do that to others, the give me protocol?
Won't the kids do that to others? Like, I'm not sure what that
Won't
means.
they ask others to give them protocols?
Ask them to give them like the iPad or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, maybe. Yeah, for sure. I think I'm getting that. If you could...
Yeah, Nikki, if you're still here and you want to clarify for us a little bit more, definitely want to answer your question the best we can.
Sure. So by that, like, will they still like refuse to give something to somebody else? Likely. Like at first it'll be like if it's Allison doing it and they learn how to give Allison something, it'll only work with Allison. But once you've kind of got it settled, you can start adding kind of more people in. Mom, dad, grandma, teacher. And they can do the same thing. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by having other kids do it. Maybe you mean like, can you teach them how to give the item to another kid? Yep, you can. Following kind of the exact same thing. It's asking a lot of a kid to be able to do that correctly. But if that's what you're asking, then certainly, especially if you've got like a sibling who's older and is kind of on board with helping out, which most of them are. I see. There's a little. Does that eye thing mean like how many people are watching right now?
Yes, it does.
Oh, yeah, I learn a new thing all the time. You are listening to Adam Dreyfus, Chief Science Officer of AnswersNow. We are talking about how to think like a behavior analyst, answering questions about behaviors. So feel free to ask more questions. You can type in the comment box or email in. You can even ask Allison. Allison's what's your title?
I'm the brand manager.
Brand manager. I want to make sure I got that right. I was going to say engagement manager, I think, but brand manager. It's our kind of our marketing guru who helps us out and helps me out when I do these things because it's a little complicated for me.
Gotcha. Nikki clarified on her question.
Oh, look at you, Nikki.
And then I have one more after that too. Nikki says, my child would just take an item from another child without appropriately asking, but just by saying, give me.
So they would learn like, hey, if I just go up and say give me to something, I can take whatever I want. That's a great question, Nikki. There's certainly kids that I've worked with that take some of the things that they've learned and generalize them out to being able to do whatever they want like that. Like, oh, this is great. You just have to say give me and you get whatever you want. So yes, like that could happen. But that would be like is usually the case. Once someone learns a new skill, you it gives you new problems to have to deal with. So you would just have to teach them, like, it's not okay to just take things from other people, which you are not alone on that. You have teachers helping you out. There's all kinds of other people. It is a general rule of thumb in our society. You can't just take something from somebody. I will say, though, and I hope this kind of makes sense, that it is a reasonable request for a child to have to hand to an adult something they were asking them for. Could be scissors, could be an iPad, could be whatever. It's not just teaching the kids to follow directions from anybody, but that's one of those skills that you need in your house, at school, as you get older at work, right? Like it's a. But yes, I could see the odd kid here and there using that as weaponizing the give me protocol. It's a great question, Nikki. Thanks. Any other questions?
No,
Nope.
Diana had jumped in to kind of back Nikki up with clarifying, but you have Diana and you have Lisa that have both said hello.
Oh, hi Lisa and hi Diana. It is super nice of you guys to take some time out of your busy schedules to tune in tonight. We also this is I think our third or fourth one, and they've been pretty popular, and we like doing them. But you can tell us what kind of topics you would like covered. Like we could do one just on eating. We could do one on what if my kid learns ABA skills from me and uses them in daycare against other kids. Kind of like that one a lot. But whatever it is that you would like, one of the really powerful truths about applied behavior analysis is it applies to any kind of behavior. We're sitting here mostly because of autism spectrum disorder, but ABA is not an autism-specific thing. There's people work in this field. They work with helping people lose weight, quit smoking. There's all kinds of ABA therapists working in corporations to like better the work environment and make people work faster. Those are the dark ABA people. You know, if we have a specific color and specific music, everybody's 8% more productive. It's a little spooky. I'm just here to try to teach kids some stuff. So we are pretty close to wrapping up. We're clocking in a little bit over 40 minutes. Love doing this. And super appreciate all the moms, dads, and folks tuning in. Valerie's and Lisa's and Diana's. Who am I missing? Nikki, that's right. Nikki's got the best question. You can also just email me directly, Adam at GetAnswersNow, if you've got a specific question for me. I would love to be able to answer it. But we are here to try to spread the word about this new app that we've got where you can connect directly to your own BCBA. So instead of having to tune in on a specific time on a Facebook night to get some answers, the answers are no further away than your pocket. So with that, we're going to say good evening, unless we're good to go. I got the thumbs up. You can check us out online at getanswersnow.com. There's a million ways to connect with us, and I just want to thank you very much for taking some time out of what is, I'm certain, a busy.
Do we have time for one final question?
Sure.
Nikki wants to know.
When am I going to get a haircut? I've been
No, that's my question.
I've been getting some grief. Trust me.
Nikki wants to know, her child's anxiety grows when a violation occurs. Example, he left his lunchbox at school. When he got home, he realizes he left the item at school. We don't go to get it, but his anxiety is difficult to deal with. Any suggestions on that?
Hopefully you guys heard that. So Nikki had a sort of an anxiety question. I would love, you know what, that's a kind of a no-brainer. I can do a series of these on anxiety. So the example was, child goes to school, leaves the lunchbox at school, comes home, realizes the lunchbox is at school, of course wants the lunchbox back. Parents, I think very reasonably, are like, listen, we're not going to go back to school. We'll get your lunchbox tomorrow. But the child experiences quite a bit of anxiety around that. One of the problems with anxiety is it's sometimes hard to figure out what's driving the anxiety, especially with kids who don't have great communication skills. And frankly, even kids who do have really good communication skills have a hard time using language to identify exactly what's going on. We get ourselves in all kinds of trouble asking a 5 or a 6-year-old, what do they think about stuff? Because they don't have the tools necessarily to answer us in a way that we expect them to answer, almost like a little adult, like, oh, I thought about it, and the reason I'm anxious is that's my favorite lunchbox. So two kind of answers. One is just general anxiety coping strategies. I've got a 3-year-old girl who's pretty anxious, and we watch a lot of Daniel Tiger. Why? Because Daniel Tiger's got all kinds of coping strategies for kids. Little songs like, what do you do when you're feeling scared? Count to 4, count to 4. And kids really internalize this, right? Like everything, it's not accidental that nursery rhymes are short, lyrical rhyme, because that's how kids learn like all of their morals and things. So teaching your child just general strategies for when you're feeling anxiety, how to kind of calm yourself down, whether that's reaching out to a parent or, what we call self-management strategies, something that you can do yourself. Or in this particular case, finding out exactly what it was that is making them anxious. Usually with kids, you can do some kind of distraction that kind of shifts them off of the sort of focus around that one item. So in this particular case, you might make a little story, literally draw 4 empty boxes on a piece of paper. I gotta be careful when I move on this table, the TV or the camera. So you draw 4 empty boxes on a piece of paper, and literally like little stick figures, you would just say, hey, Mike left his lunch at school. You draw a little school in it. But the lunchbox is okay, and tomorrow Mike is going to be able to say hi to his lunchbox. So here he is getting on the bus and going to school, and then, hey, there's Lunchbox. Hi, Lunchbox, how are you doing? Literally just holding on to that piece of paper like you hand it to him, and you're like, yeah, you see what's going on? Can be very calming, because now they have a sequence of events that is laid out for them that satisfies their anxiety. They've got a term, because what they tend not to be able to do is something that you can do, and I can do. I'm pretty good at it. I can get some kind of anxious. But is use the language in our head to calm ourselves down. So they need something external. So like a little story, a little song, a little, call those like little social stories. I hope that answers it. That's a challenging one. Like I said, I've got a little girl who gets very anxious about stuff, and we do a lot of these kind of strategies.
All right, one more question.
Oh, I love it. You guys are challenging me to stop. Allison's going to be like, we got to go home now.
This is from Heather, and she says her daughter likes to throw objects. In all 4 instances you mentioned, wanting an item, escape, and frustration. Do you have any suggestions to help curb this behavior? Thank you.
So this is why it's so good to have kind of your own BCBA, because you can unpack these things in a little bit more detail. So your daughter likes to throw objects. So based on kind of our framework, what we've gone through tonight, the first thing would be like, we want to figure out why does she do it. I would say the first one I would look at is attention. And then if that was the case, that would be pretty straightforward. When she throws the object, you just ignore it. And when she's not throwing the object, you make a big deal out of it. It sounds overly simple. It is that kind of simple. In the same way that we're behavior analysts, kids are too, right? They're trying to maneuver us. That's how you end up with kids who only eat white bread. They've successfully maneuvered their parents to only give them white bread. Doubtful it's escape. I have almost no information because I'm not sure what she'd be escaping from other than playing with the doll, which is probably not very likely. It could be she just likes the sound of, like, kids will just repetitively do things. That's how they're learning kind of how the world works. My son last night, we had a balloon because we had my daughter's birthday over the weekend, so there's a balloon in the house. And he was just throwing, he had like a handful of pencils, and he was just throwing pencils at the balloon. I asked him if he was trying to pop it. He said no. I was like, oh, all right. I'm not sure what you're doing. And it was just interesting to him. He was just, hey, look, I can throw and hit the balloon. So I don't know. And we would call that like automatically reinforcing. Like maybe your daughter is throwing the doll because she likes the way it sounds, or she likes the way that it looks kind of flying through the air. In that case, you want to give her a new thing to do with the doll. You want to teach her something that is not just throwing the doll. Although this kind of behavior would not like rise to the level of like, oh, this is a big concern if nobody's getting hurt and she's not hurting herself. but teaching her to play with the doll in a different way, maybe introducing another doll and having them argue and stuff. One question I would have, and I don't know if we've got time for it, do you go pick up the doll, or does she pick up the doll when it gets thrown? If you've got time to answer that, I will hang out for another minute, unless there's any more questions.
Heather added to this while we're waiting for her to respond. She said that her daughter has target behaviors that the OT is helping us with, like puzzles and games. She throws the pieces and runs away.
So a little bit more information. Thank you very much, Heather. So she has target behaviors like puzzles and games, and she throws the pieces and runs away. So that's pretty straightforward escape behavior. Like, I'm going out on a limb, could be wrong. She might not like playing with puzzles, and the games would be the easiest one, working with the OT. Usually, kids really like working with OTs. OTs have a lot of fun stuff, right? They have squishy things, they have different things that they're working for. So if, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but stick with me, Heather. If she just likes the sound of the doll going, like it's sensory behavior, it's like she just likes it, that behavior is extending to puzzles and games. She just likes throwing things. I feel like there's probably two different things, because with the OT there and kind of working with her, that's a pretty heavy demand situation, right? She's got an adult trying to get her to do things. Probably escape behavior for throwing the stuff. My recommendation would be either try something else. She might not be understanding what the OT is trying to do. It's just frustrating for her. Like, that's kind of falls under that. Does she have the prerequisite skills to do what it is that we're asking? But I think it's great that the OT is trying to teach her a variety of new things, because that will help kind of lessen those behaviors where you're like, oh, I wonder why that's going. Because she'll just develop new skills. She'll learn how to ride a bike. She'll learn how to do things. I hope I answered your question.
Heather said that she picks the toy up.
The doll?
Yes.
Heather does? Or?
Yes, Heather does.
So, I wonder how old your daughter is. I'm guessing 3 would be my guess. She can answer?
She isn't answering yet. There is like a 10-second lag.
Oh, there's a 10-second lag. So I will fill this in a little bit and say you're still listening to Adam Dreyfus from AnswersNow, answering questions about behavior and how to think like a behavior analyst. This was way more active than I thought, because I didn't see any messages for a long time. And now we're getting all kinds of great questions, and I enjoy trying to game through this with you. Now, I want you to imagine that you got access to someone like me who's pretty good at that stuff. But instead of just this little tiny window of a couple of minutes where you're asking a couple of questions, you can ask as many questions as you want all day, every day, and take the time to really get to the actual answers. Because frankly, like, I am kind of guessing.
Her daughter is 3.
Boom! That was a pretty good behavior analyst thing there. Very common sort of 3. So I'm guessing that you've tried just not picking it up. I would just not pick it up. If she wants to play with the doll, she can go pick it up. Or she can learn to ask you in an appropriate way. Like, it doesn't have to be vocal. So, like, she might not be able to talk, but maybe she raises her hand. Maybe she points at it and smiles at you some way other than just training mom to go pick stuff up. If she's got an OT, she might have mobility issues, so she might not be able to go get it, in which case you're working with an extremely clever 3-year-old. Who's gamed through some of their what's going on in their world. Next question would be like, can she go pick it up? I can understand why you would go pick it up if maybe she's in a high chair or something like that. But I would cut back on going and getting it for her. She will survive. She probably needs to learn a little bit. Like, if you throw something, sometimes it's just not available right away. I might build a piece in where if I pick it up, instead of just handing it back to her, I put it someplace where she can see so that it's there, but she has to do another thing to get the doll back. Like I said, like she maybe point to a doll on I don't know what her communication level is, but some other piece that comes in where it makes it less her just making mom do something and an actual teaching moment for her to learn a new skill. All right, we are going to stop at this point. This has been great. I'm glad to see there's way more activity on this than I thought. I have been and am continue to be Adam Dreyfus, the Chief Science Officer for AnswersNow. AnswersNow is a super fun, innovative new app that you can download in the Apple Store or off of Google Play, and it will connect you, boom, directly to your own clinician, board certified behavior analyst. This is one of those commercials where words popped up. Do that, board certified behavior analyst. One thing I have learned since we started this company is that behavior analysts really, really love this platform. They like being able to reach more people. They like being able to help people like this. So they're out there waiting for you. Check out our website, getanswersnow.com, and we will see you in a couple weeks. And again, feel free to shoot us topics that you would want to see for this, or would you like a different background? I was saying this is a little bland, and obviously I need a haircut, so we'll see you on the backside of a haircut, trimmed up a little bit. All right, thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful Wednesday evening.